But I think one thing that we really need to realize is that when we go through stuff like this, that's when endurance is made. What the Lord has taught us during that time will forever change us. Like, it's forever impacted us. And so, of course, there's a Bible verse on that. There's a Bible verse on everything, okay? Hi. I was actually not supposed to film a video today. I schedule out with them very specifically on what days I film them and whatnot. But my kids are all napping. I took them to the pool this morning, and so they're all napping, and they should be napping for another hour. And I was like, well, why don't I just film something? And again, normally when I do film, I do have stuff pre-planned and kind of worked through, or have premeditated on it. But I've been praying about it for the last 30 minutes, and so I really do want to just make a video, and we'll see the direction of which the Lord takes it. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about trials and being in the thick of a storm, and a lot of what we've gone through the last couple of weeks, just because it is so fresh. And I don't want to make it seem like all of my content is going to be revolved around this, but I do think there is a lot that we have learned. I feel like a completely different person standing here today than I did 2 weeks ago. Has it been 2 weeks already? Maybe 3 weeks? Gosh, I feel like a completely different person in the best way. The Lord has truly just used this for His glory and for His good, and He's just been so faithful that I just want to share all of that, and want to share for anyone else who might currently be in the thick of a storm. Because the thing about a storm is, when you're in the middle of it, all you want to do is get out of the storm. And I remember at one point I told Jordan, I was like, when is it not gonna hurt? When is it not gonna hurt anymore? That might be something that you're going through right now too. And it can just be something where you're I just wanna be done. I just want this to be over, and I just want this to be done so we can move on and whatever, okay? Just wanna forget about that. But I think one thing that we really need to realize is that when we go through stuff like this, that's when endurance is made. There's a verse on that. Of course there's a Bible verse on that. There's a Bible verse on everything, okay? I gotta look it up though, because I have it highlighted here somewhere. Okay, in the book of James, if you haven't read it, if you're going through, read James. James is it's such a short 5 chapters. It's so, mine is literally 2 pages. It's so quick, but it's so rich and dense with goodness. In the very beginning, it talks about testing your faith. And so it's James 1:2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let the steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to them. So there's been quite a lot that I've been specifically praying, but in the midst of all of this, one thing that I just kept wanting and kept saying is Lord, allow me to not want to escape the storm, because I know there's so much that you're showing us, and we're in the thick of the storm, and you would think everything around us is falling apart, and we're just we had peace, we had joy, we were able to, during that time, will forever change us. It's forever impacted us. And so during, and I would still consider us being in the storm, but during those very first couple of days where we're all whoa, hold on, wait, we were supposed to be moving, and this baby was supposed to have a room. We already had the room picked out. I already had, our whole world just had shifted, and we had to just completely, our entire, you guys know we are such big planners, especially when it comes to traveling, and with everything, that our entire year had really been, because we had found out in February, so our entire year projected and had shifted and changed according to my pregnancy. And so now that it wasn't there, it was just a lot at once. We're wait, we so wanted to be a family for, wait, we had this planned for this baby, and the kids wanted, it was just oh. And so those really first couple of days where we're having to completely reshift our entire thinking, because everything changed, I just kept praying Lord, use us during this time. Like, I know I want to escape the storm, but what are you teaching me in the storm? So that was one thing I really kept praying. Another thing I kept praying is that, and I just for peace, the thing is, if you guys listen to or like watch my video that I talked about it previously, but one thing that, maybe I haven't even shared this, maybe I did in my stories, I can't really remember if I did or not, but on my drive to my midwife appointment, I had such peace, and I was getting so emotional, like thinking about becoming a mother of 4, and I was just so excited, and I was worshiping. And on the way back and driving back home, I'm so thankful that I had a 45-minute drive home, because it gave me an opportunity to really not process, but really just like drive and have nothing else to do other than worship. Like I was confined to driving home. The only thing I know how to do when I'm driving is worship, other than like drive. And so my kids were just in the back of the car, and I was just like worshiping, because I was like, I don't know what else to do. Nothing else I can do right now will help me other than this. And that is all that I did. I'll link a playlist that I created down below, because this playlist, Chef's Kiss, you guys, it really helped us. It really helped us, because a lot of these songs are just rooted in scripture, and so it just allows you and gives you that opportunity to meditate on his word and what his word says. And that was really beautiful, and I'm very thankful for that 45 minutes that I had, because Jordan wasn't with me, and so I had to tell him over the phone, and while this was all happening, so I knew that once I got home I would finally get a chance to see him, and then I knew that would be like another thing that we'd have to, that wound would just like be open even more, because it was us experiencing that together. And so I'm so thankful for that drive, because if it wasn't for that drive, I feel like it would have been a lot harder. Like, I don't know, again, the Lord's hand was working in every single thing, but I bring it back to peace, because on the drive back, while my whole world was flipped upside down, I still had so much peace. And I just kept praying for peace, like a blanket of peace. I was like, Lord, wrap me up in this blanket of peace. And truly I have felt that. There's not been a single second that I have felt out of control or anxious, or like, you know that feeling when like you're like your heart just is yes, hopelessness. That I have not experienced that, because my hope isn't in anything that's here. And so I never felt like panicky and hopeless and like out of control, because I know I don't have any control to begin with. So it wasn't like I suddenly, like the thought that we never thought we had control, and so like I never therefore felt lack of or out of control. And so yeah, there was no hopelessness, because our hope is in Jesus, and like our foundation, like he is our rock and our foundation. Which brings me to another verse in Matthew. In Matthew 7:24, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like wise men who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And anyone who hears these words of mine and does not know them will be like a foolish man whose house is built in the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. So I feel like for us, it was just really confirmation that our house truly was built on the rock of Jesus, because we're in the thick of the storm, and you would think like everything around us is falling apart, and we're just like, we had peace, we had joy, like we were able to function, like we were able to continue because of the peace that we have from him. And so another thing that I kept praying too is that this time, and I need to find I think my journal is in the car, but I have like a prayer journal that I've been like writing in this entire time. And another thing that I kept praying for was obviously peace. I was praying for no like unity. Like I was praying for things that I wanted versus praying against things I didn't want. So, because I feel like normally that's where I tend to go, is like, I don't want anger, I don't want this, but I really tried to like make sure I focused exactly what I know the Lord would want for us. And so unity was a huge one, and like fortifying our marriage, and the Lord has definitely done that. I feel like Jordan and I have never been more in love than we have now, and have depended and relied on each other. It's just been such a beautiful thing to witness, because I know that a lot of the time when something like this happens, you want to pin against each other, or you want to blame one another. I feel like the enemy takes such advantage of stuff like that. Like, he takes advantage of your vulnerability. Like, he does not care what you're going through. He came here to do 3 things, and those are the only 3 things he knows how to do. Like, and he will take full advantage of the hardship and the trials and the storms we go through. And so I was like, he will not have a single second to come into this family. And so I just was praying for everything to just be fortified and unified, us with the kids. And then another thing, I just really kept thinking about our kids, like our youngest ones, especially the oldest 2, just because they are at an age where they can remember things. And so I think this has been the first thing that's happened in our family that they can both remember. And so I just kept praying that they would look back at this time and be like, wow, mom and dad, like, were hugging and kissing and loving each other. They weren't angry. They weren't fighting. Like, I just really wanted them to be able to look back at this time and be like, wow, mom and dad do have joy. Mom and dad do have peace. Like, we're living the fruit of the Lord. Like, it's not pretend, you know? It's not like, oh, mom and dad just go to church on Sunday and then like live out like completely different people every other day of the week. Like, no, they are living the life of Christ. Like, they are living how Christians live. And so I wanted that to be a witness to our kids too. So I was like, Lord, use us, like use Jordan and I right now as how to be an example for our kids of what it looks like to go through a storm and how you can unify each other. Like, use us to give an example to our kids of what it can look like to go through a storm with Jesus. Because I think for a lot of people, they don't go through a storm with Jesus. And I have no idea how people can go through life without Jesus. And then I have no idea how people go through storms without Jesus. I just could not even imagine. How do you do that? You can't. You can, but it's not going to be pretty. Yeah, I just kept praying, like, use us as an example for our kids. Like, I just remember when I was in the car driving back home and I was like, I just want to worship. Like, I had my hands out and I remember Lathy kept looking at me and she kept asking me, she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just praising Jesus. And I just really wanted her to see and witness that. I wanted her to witness what this can look like. And just really allowed the Lord to use us in that. And then another thing I kept praying for too was just to have joy and peace during this. Obviously we still have sadness and like we're grieving. Like, there's nothing wrong with having all of these emotions and going through that. The problem is when we let that like be a part of our character and like dictate that and let that affect everything else. Because I didn't want to become like a bitter person. Another thing that I really prayed for was the Lord to help me have so much joy for other women who are pregnant, about to have a baby, and not be envious. Because I know from my past of like when I would get pregnant, I remember I'd always see comments of women being like, I just miscarried and I just can't follow anymore. I can't see this stuff. Like, and I get that. I understand that. I'm not condemning them for that, but I just didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to have a single ounce of bitterness in my heart for anyone. I wanted to truly be able to rejoice and be joyful for other people who are in that season that I like longed and would love to be in too, because I just didn't want any of that in my heart. And so I prayed that from the very start, because I was like, let this not start to fester. Like, let's not have this take any root at all, because I don't want to deroot this. This isn't even gonna start. Like, I'm not picking this weed. The weed isn't even growing. Yeah, that was another thing I prayed for. Another thing I prayed for that maybe sounds kind of weird, but was like our sex life, just because like when you go to have like when you're pregnant and like then you miscarry, like all of that I feel like can play a huge role in that. So I was like, Lord, let this like not be a thing that hardens or changes any of that. Like, let it just really be unifying and really beautiful, and that it doesn't hinder this. Well, okay, I'm already in Matthew, so I kind of wanted to share Matthew 15, where it kind of talks about fruit. 15:16, it says, you will recognize them by their fruit. Are grapes either from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruit. And I think this was just a really good, like this has given us a good example, or has shown us that you can still see our fruit. And I was just so thankful. Like, I've been very thankful during all of this too, which sounds so ironic. It sounds so counterintuitive to how you should feel during something like this, but truly I have. And it's not like a reverse psychology. It's not like a reverse thing of like trying to be positive, and it's not really like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I've just really been thankful that the Lord has given us an opportunity to grow closer to one another. There are some prayers that we've prayed that you like don't really know like what the Lord's gonna do with them. And I shared in a Q&A, it was probably 5 or 6 months ago at this point, but I shared how I'd given my womb to the Lord this year. And truly when I did that, I guess I didn't realize that meant that he would like give and take life. Like, in my mind I was like, he's just gonna give me all the babies. I did not really realize that he would give and take. And so for me, I think that was like a huge shock of like, if I'm gonna surrender to the Lord, that means I have to like truly surrender everything to the Lord. I can't just surrender to what my idea and what I thought would be great and what I thought would be perfect, because he knows what is and like his plans and what he has in store. And so it has truly tested the way that I surrender, because it's like, well, I'm not gonna surrender. Surrendering all of that means that like that's what it's meant for me. And so yeah, it's definitely been experiencing true surrendering and like surrendering like your entire life and what that even means and how that can look like. But I'm so thankful for his timing too, because there's been so much that has happened in the last year in our family and just with our friends and our community, and like the Lord knows, because if this would have happened a year ago, I don't know that I would have had the same outcome. I don't know that I would be able to say that I don't have bitterness, or that I don't have, that it would have unified us. Maybe that would have broken us. And so I'm thankful for his timing, because there have been things that we've lived through and people that we've witnessed around us in our community that if we had not seen them go through something, for example, our friends Gabby and Dylan and their babies in the NICU, I'll link a podcast up here that I did with Gabby, and she shares her story in depth, and she has YouTube videos on it too, and her Instagram is filled with their girls, with Noah and Selah's story. But if it wasn't for how Jordan and I witnessed Gabby and Dylan go through their storm, I don't know that our storm would have looked like how it did. And so that's been my prayer with this too. It's like, Lord, I know that you use people and use the people around us. And so I'm so thankful for Gabby and Dylan and like getting to witness firsthand how they did it, because it's really changed and affected the way that I handled my storm too. And so my prayer is that with how we have gone through this, that maybe when you go through a storm, you go through it a little bit different. And the thing is, it's different going through a storm with Jesus than not. And I know people like are strange and like, why are you continuing with life? And I'm like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Like, my hope is in Jesus. My hope and my foundation is in him. He is unwavering. Like, what do you mean? You know, I feel like that it's just, and it can look so foreign to people. Like, having joy and like having peace can look so foreign to people in the thick of something like this, that it's so hard for them to understand. Like, they truly can't grasp it. And like, time will not heal wounds, guys. We really need to take that phrase, like, time. No, it does not. Time does not heal wounds. Jesus heals wounds. You could have something that you dealt with when you were 6 that will show up when you're 56. Time does not heal wounds. There's many studies that show anything that happened in childhood tends to show up when you're in your 50s. That's like 40, 50 years of stuff. Like, that's a lot of time. Wouldn't you say that's like half of your life? Wouldn't that have healed? No, it doesn't. Time does not heal things. Jesus does. And so I'm glad knowing that, like, has been our reality. So yeah. Oh, here's another great thing in Matthew 6:19. Do not lay up yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up yourself treasures in heaven. Neither moss nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break and steal. For where your treasure is, your heart will be also. That's good, because if your treasures aren't here, like if you're like truly, the things that you love and the things that are around you, like your treasures are stored in heaven, then when things like this happen, it's like, oh, okay, that sucks, but my treasures aren't stored here. So that's good. Yeah, I think that's all I gotta say, y'all. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So if you are currently going through a storm or have been through a storm, I would love if you would comment the verse that pulled you through, like the verse that you just stuck to. Because I think a lot of us during moments like this, we cling on to a specific verse. And so I'd love to know what your specific verse is. Or if there's like a specific worship song or a specific word that's like, just let me know what you've clung on to. Because I think it can be a huge encouragement to other people too. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Love you guys.